and welcome to the program of Uncommon Sense. My name is Dr. Mel Gill, and I'm here to help you sort out whatever issues you may have and to help you determine what would be the best course of action in everything that you do. I'm here to be your servant, to help you whenever I can. Hey, Mamji, acknowledge my mother who is tuning in as well. And I'm sorry for not having been present in the last little while. I've been dealing with computer issues, especially since I'm installing a lot of new software and trying to get my studio ready, up and running, and connecting this and that and this and that tends to blow out a lot of parts of a very old computer, 12-year-old computer. Let me first of all make an invitation, copy to the clipboard, for those of you who would like to come on board and chat with me about anything, including my son who may be listening right now, if he is. You will see this loop as well. And if there's any questions, you can also join me on Facebook as well as YouTube. Apologies for not having enough clarity of thought here, and as I'm rushing to put it all together again one more time, I forgot that I pulled this a lot earlier. So now let me put this thing on, and this will be great. Now, while we're waiting for this to populate, and I'm also waiting for the speakers to come on board, if who would like to come in and share their thoughts, I have been asked several questions, and I asked my son to put those questions together. Luke may or may not be able to join us. He's got a lot of things to go through, and right now he's got several issues he has to combat and work through, and I wish him well. I doubt he'll be back in time before he finishes all those important things, official things that need to get done before the end of the week. But if he does join us, he'll be my co-host in this program. Today, I wanted to talk to you about some of the questions that people have asked me on private chat on Facebook, and one or two of you actually through YouTube. I appreciate your following me. We're not, if you notice, we're not in any clockwork sort of time schedule yet. I'm still trying to adjust, and as soon as all the machines and the computers are ready and we are, all I have to do is just speak, then we will be all set to let you know ahead of time. I may have to hire somebody to actually become the program director for this program, Uncommon Sense, and to help me with the various websites that need to come up in relation to all of this and the various courses that have to be finished as well. What are the courses on? Well, so many different things, actually. The things that we wanted to talk about in the beginning was basically spiritual growth. And somebody had asked me this question, and here's a segue into the question as well. What are some of the ways in which we can grow spiritually? Do we have to be part of a cult? Do we have to be part of a religious inclination one way or another? Or do we have to follow some sort of guru? The answer to all three questions is no. You don't have to, but if it helps you, then, do it. Do whatever helps you. But in the meanwhile, if there's something that you need that you can work on alone, let me tell you that all the books in the world, all the gurus in the world, and everybody who's actually telling you that this is the way you ought to be, should be, must be, walk away from anything that says you must do this, you must be that. And yet, while you do all of that, you have to have some sort of a concerted plan, because there's a part of you, your unconscious mind, your very powerful, all-knowing, omniscient super consciousness knows exactly what you need and provides for you all of that and leads you into those places and guides you into those places where you can get the nourishment you need, whether it's spiritual or otherwise, or anything close to that. because basically that's what we are. We seem like we're on a pilgrimage from the minute we were born, and this pilgrimage, leads us in a journey to become nomads in the world. And somewhere along the way, we choose a piece of soil that we want to call home, thinking that we own it, but we don't. Time will take it away from us slowly. Generations that come after us have minds of their own, may not even remember who we are and the things that we built in the world. All they're interested in is what they need for themselves then. And who knows what the future brings for everybody. So let's talk about yourself then, because we cannot plan for other people. We cannot plan for our children. We try, but we can't. We cannot plan for our spouse, which rhymes with louse. We also cannot plan for anything else other than what we know and what we are in control of, which is our minds, our thoughts, our thinking patterns. So how do you grow spiritually over the next 3, 6, 7, 8, 10 months, 12 months? And I've had to ask myself that question from age 17. And that sometimes every January, when we've already made all of those New Year's resolutions, I ensure that I don't end up those years in the same place, spiritually, as when the previous year started. I had made myself certain promises that I would give myself enough time, that I would give myself enough leeway to be able to breathe, that I would be able to give myself the necessary love that I need to give to myself. And you'd be surprised how quickly 10 years can pass without having memorized 1 or 2 verses of scripture, or even getting rid of a habitual sin in your life, quote unquote sin, without having shared some of your thoughts with people. Pick up a religious book if you want to. Read it throughout the whole year. Study a topic that would help you somewhere along the way. And some people will say, well, does that mean that we have to adhere to one spiritual book or another? Well, listen, learn from everyone. Everyone can be a teacher. Everyone from God to the dog, which is reverse spelling, but, it can teach you that way. So how can you build a spiritual life as opposed to a religious life? Well, let's talk about that. And if you have some thoughts on that, please come in to this studio and let's chat about those kind of things as well. And maybe it would help you. And then later throughout the program, maybe we'll run for an hour today. I'll teach you how to measure how much you have grown spiritually. Would that be useful? So think about, usually they say in terms of a habit patterns, there are like 21 days, about 3 weeks before a habit is part of your thinking structure, part of your framework, part of your paradigm of seeing the world. So what can you do to be able to do all of those things and grow at the same time? So all I can give you is practical suggestions, practical advice. And it's not anything that's, you must pray 15 times a day, you must follow the eastern sun until it sets, whatever the case might be. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west, the other way around, depending on which planet you're on also. So first step, be a river, not a swamp. Now, what does that mean? Well, many good books say rivers of living water. They refer will flow from the heart of those who believe in higher spirits. Now, remember, the mountain stream that carries fresh life and fresh water, it carries the fresh life because it's always flowing out. It's not keeping it inside. It's always flowing out. And however, when you look at a swamp, it's stagnant and sometimes devours the life until you get all this methane stuck in there. And a swamp collects and retains water that comes, into its vicinity. So don't be the kind of person that seeks to accumulate, a lot of things in life before letting a lot of it flow out to the good of humanity. Where if you have a lot of knowledge, well, share it for the good of humanity. If you have a lot of wisdom about health and how to overcome health issues, then share that with humanity as well. Because it doesn't matter if you're Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or whatever else, you have to identify the fact that you have to get past all of that cynicism that life tends to fill you with, and not remain spiritually stagnant or emotionally detached from people who are suffering. And sometimes you might be intellectually cynical and saying, oh, they're not working hard enough, or whatever the case might be. Resolve to break that dam inside of you that doesn't allow your blessings to flow continuously. The freshness is in the flow. If there are people who are designated, no matter what you do, will never change. And people who are not really good people, we don't have to hang around with them. We don't have to keep on giving pearls to swine. It's very difficult. Just turn away and walk away. So number two, to live a more spiritual life is to maintain gratitude, to be able to identify your blessings on a daily, if not hourly basis. And all too often, let me try to say it again, all too often, we go through life oblivious to the good that comes from flowing into our lives. Try this spiritual exercise for 1 week. At the end of the first day, identify a blessing that came to you from a family member. And at the end of the second day, maybe it's a blessing that came to you from a neighbor. Or a third day from a friend. And fourth day from a colleague. And fifth day from a stranger. And sixth day from a child. And on the seventh day, a blessing that came from an enemy. Now, when you start to grade your ability to be grateful, even for the people who are not the most pleasant in your life, then you have reached a huge measure of spirituality that is impossible to measure. That you can love, quote unquote, eventually your enemies. Think about that. You'd be surprised. Or if you don't want to say you have enemies, then people who think they are your enemies. And this is where your mental health comes in. Speak words of blessings. That's number three. Be like all the prophets and all the good messengers of God. Try to speak good words of blessing instead of cursing. It doesn't matter that you use language that is flowery or rainbowy, if you will, a few F's thrown in there. It doesn't matter. As long as the intent to bless, the intent to help is there. You can use language of the street to be able to communicate with a lot of people. You'd be surprised. And in fact, they say that people who use strong language like that are usually more intelligent. I don't know. Let's find out. Number four, nurture shared time for yourself between you and a higher force, if you will, even if it's inside. It doesn't have to be outside, where you are constantly in a state, at least for half an hour in a day. Give a half an hour, if not 2 sessions of half an hour each, one in the early part of the day, one in the latter part of the day. You can do it in between, even better. You can do it in a traffic jam when you're sitting and stuck in a car. That's okay as well. Just give thanks. To be able to give thanks and to be able to pray for everything that you have. When I say pray, I don't mean like please God, give me this, give me that, give me this. No. A sort of prayer like a communion, if you will, with a higher force, and say thank you. This is amazing. Thank you for everything I'm experiencing today. I don't take it for granted, and I wish if there's a way I could help someone. And that's where it leads us to the fifth thing, which is to take a leap of faith. Take a leap of faith. Know that you are being guided. Know that nothing that happens in the earth or on the earth is an accident. Everything has been decided almost to the drop, and the drop of water or the drop of juice that comes off the vines of the grapes. I can tell you that there's so many things in the world that you have to pay attention to. let not the direction of your life be one of them, because trust me, you are being guided. From the day you were born, you have a purpose here on earth. And then maybe on the Friday show, day after tomorrow, I'll explain a little bit more how I have come to know that it's true. Number 6, somewhere along the way, is something that will take a little bit of time and will take a little bit of faith, and it will also test your faith at the same time. Try to restore someone's faith in the miraculous, someone's faith in the fact that there is a spiritual presence somewhere on the planet, off the planet, in a separate, different dimension somewhere, where the technology, the way of life is spiritual. The way of thinking is spiritual. There's no tit or tat. I give you, you give me. It's not something like that. It's more like I give, 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 give. I want to give because it's my nature to give. And that's it. Nothing. I expect nothing in return. If you can restore someone's faith in that unconditional love of the God force, well, things change. Number 7, if you can be a grateful person throughout the way you live life, every day from the minute you wake up, like I do, 3 times, I always say, I put my feet on the side of the bed and I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just head off to the day and I do marvelous things with the day. If you want to, number 8, share your journey with people. Hook up with somebody else who's growing spiritually as well, or who could use some help growing spiritually as well. And agree to meet maybe once a week or twice a week, or for a period of time to study, to discuss, to have coffee, meet and to discuss spiritual matters. Discuss how what happened to you during the week was very difficult for you to relate to any form of spirituality. So as a result, you have difficulty, and this is how you're going to share that difficulty as well. So, wow, welcome everybody. Why did this sink so much? It used to be higher. Let me move this out of the way so I can read. Let me welcome a few people into the room. My mother, of course, Bobby Costales, welcome. Vinraj, welcome. Natanapa, welcome. Bing, welcome. And Mr. Can't Read Chinese, welcome. Today, you're listening to Uncommon Sense. I've been off the air for a little bit, trying to figure out how machines work, working with patience, and let me tell you, it's very difficult. When you try to put new software in old machines, it's like trying to put your grandmother in motorcycle clothes. You know, it just doesn't work. She slips off the bike a lot, and you just pray that she knows how to steer somewhere along the way. So I've had to change the hard drive, not change, restore the hard drive. I have to literally, and so this is the one I'm talking from, my computer that's been with me for 12 years. And I backed up everything. So I'm very, very happy. And in backing it up, I think it happened for the better, because my first panic was I'm going to lose all that information I worked all these years for. And all the things that people needed to give me to be able to run the business for MetaSecret and everything else effectively, well, guess what? I found it finally in other drives. I found it finally in other hard drives and everything else. And I'm so happy about that. And there's so much of it, so much material, so much content that I need to share with the world. So in between, besides sharing the journey with people, you need to also serve. You've heard me say often enough that I am here to serve. My purpose is to serve you. Now, as you serve people, always understand you do it with humility. But even as you serve people and do it with humility, you are not a servant of anyone. And when you realize that, it's the feeling is you are literally king of the world. You own everything because you don't need anything. And when you don't need anything, you're the richest man in the world. And so as a result, being the richest man or woman in the world, you and having no needs, not big needs, you are so wealthy, it's not funny. And if you are constantly craving for money to do this project, that project, make sure that it's something that will live on way past you. And so we'll have at least a life of 500 to 5,000 years, and it will help humanity as a whole. And then that's great. That's fantastic. But if it's only for the next couple of years or so because you're building a statue for butterflies, well, okay, whatever makes you happy, and at least you're not robbing a bank or something like that, so that's okay. So be able to take the helicopter view. Sometimes I even remind my parents, who are much older than me, and family members as well, you got to be able to practice, and this is all part of, I've lost count what I'm going to say anyway, but you need to maintain a helicopter view of the situation. If you are fighting with someone because they drank half of your Coca-Cola, and you'd have to go out and get another Coca-Cola to be able to do this, come on, man. Take a big picture of it. When you fight with them about their stealing the Coca-Cola from you and and therefore enriching themselves at your expense, and you are half a Coca-Cola bottle less of a person, seriously, you would piss off a relationship goodbye. You would working situation you would put in jeopardy because of half a bottle of Coca-Cola. So you need to maintain a helicopter view of everything. In the long run, does it matter? So what I do to be able to come to that helicopter view is to spend a lot of time recognizing that in the solitude, a lot of time in solitude, recognizing that we are all connected in so many ways. It's not funny how we're connected. It's one thing that we say and do impacts another person, who impacts another person, who impacts another person, who builds something that impacts 100,000 more. So you have to be able to spend that time in solitude and understand, this. Let me give you an example. Friedrich Nietzsche, for instance, says that sometimes the silence works both ways. Not only are you gifted in the silence, solitude makes you tougher towards yourself, tenderer towards other people. It softens the way you deal with other people. I'm not exactly sure what that phrase was that he said that with, but he says that when you start to spend enough time alone, you begin to realize the power that bubbles within you, that like molten lava. Spend time, if you will, in fasting and prayer if you want to, or meditation is probably the best thing. Meditation is going nowhere, not a specific target, not to be able to do a particular thing, not to be able to feel a particular thing, not to be able to open a particular thing or close a particular thing. Meditation without a purpose in mind is simply that. When you are not thinking about something and your thinking diminishes to the level where you are not only feeling, because people confuse feeling and thinking that they're both separate, but they're one and the same. A thought generates a feeling. So if you ignore that thought and not pay attention to it, then there is no feeling that comes about as a result of that. So you got to pay attention to that. And non-thinking and thinking too much takes you the other way. Non-thinking takes you into the meditation you need. But if you believe in a higher force, then you have to ask yourself, why are you worried when you know that the higher force has you or your best interest in mind? Why would you be so worried? It doesn't make any sense. If your gods, all of you who are religious, I say religious, not spiritual, religious, um, if your God is omnipotent, omnipotent, omniscient, uh, and your God is filled with power to see future, past, present, knows everything, is more powerful than everything, then why are you worried? Why are you worried? See, that's where people don't understand that. And so wherever you go, if you can spread love wherever you go, it's the advice, actually, it's not my advice, but the advice of Mother Teresa, who lived in Calcutta and did her work. Spread love everywhere you go, she said. First of all, in your own house, and let no one come to you without leaving better and happier, and be the living expression of the God force, if you will, of kindness. Kindness in your face, kindness in your heart, in your eyes, kindness in your smile, kindness in your warm greetings, and kindness in your voice. Now, when you have all of this, then people are soothed. And somewhere along the way, you may not know it, and it may not be apparent in the beginning, but you're healing people in spiritual ways that you have no clue about. And you need to pay attention to that as well. You need to also keep your priorities straight. Know what is ultimately important and what is not important. Because you need to consider the world's, the world. You need to consider the words of the past President George Bush. He says, "I am blessed with a close and wonderful family, and I want to spend the rest of my life letting them know how much I love them and appreciate them." This is what he once said. And one of my most important accomplishments, he said, is one where I'm still working on, is to be a huge success in the grandfather business. Now, I would like to be remembered for integrity, for service, and for family, is what he said. And sure enough, compared to the current president, anyone looks amazing. Any other choice would be great. So November 3rd, my American friends, I will be voting by mail. So please vote for the other guy, whoever the other guy is, even if it's Spider-Man. Doesn't matter. So somewhere along the way, to be able to live a full spiritual life, you need to be able to strive for excellence. Now, you don't have to become a top CEO of a company to be able to call yourself a success. You don't have to have a lot of money to be able to call yourself a success. Just be the kind of person that everybody looks forward to seeing every time you go. So every time you come into a group after leaving for some time, everybody is so glad to see you there. Because some people, if you are kind and you are soft in your words and you are kind in your actions and your tone of voice, people look forward to you. People want to spend more time with you. That's just how nature intended all animals, not just human beings, to become. We are no less than the gorillas. 98% of our genetic structure is gorilla. We come from the great apes. And like most animals, we tend to move closer towards things that are pleasurable and events and people that are pleasurable, and away from people that are not. What's the opposite of pleasure? Pain. Away from people who are painful emotionally, mentally, physically, and people who are difficult to be around because they have a sucking emptiness inside of them, and they want you and blame you that you cannot fill that for them. And so you need to educate them on that. You need to teach them to use it or lose it. Now, what does that mean? I think the Great Spirit has generously given most of us unique gifts and talents and abilities. Make use of them, or you'll actually run the risk of losing these talents and abilities. But how do you make use of them? Not just to make money and enrich yourself. Use your gifts faithfully, your talents faithfully, and you will be enlarged. And those talents will be enlarged and they will grow. Practice what you know. And you'll be amazed at the heights that you'll be able to attain, the higher knowledge you'll be able to get, the ability to solve problems on a higher level than you could ever imagine possible. So you please understand that. And if you will, center yourself around a sound. If you, let's say you're not religious. I mean, if you're religious, I have to speak to you in a different way. But if you are a spiritual person without organized religion as part of your culture, then pay attention to the fact that as you meditate, if you want to, pay attention to the fact that there are things and sounds that have lasted longer than humanity on this planet. One of them that will stir the genetic memory inside of you is the fact that the ocean, the sea, the seashore is the same sound 1,000,000 years ago as it is yesterday or today even. So when you start to pay attention to that, then you meditate on the wordless, or the Buddhists don't have a word for it. And I created this word. I told them it's called the wordless Dharma. Or in Christianity, you would call it the invisible gospel, if you will. One that you cannot see, cannot read, hasn't been chosen, part of the Apocrypha that was not included in everything. Or if you were, what religion am I leaving out? Hinduism. It would be part of the Vedas that was lost to history altogether, buried in the sea between Sri Lanka and India, and outside the shores of the harbor of Bombay, where you'll be able to find cities that have been in existence long before we knew that the oceans were 150 meters lower than what they are right now. That's kind of hard to imagine for a lot of people. But this whole watered planet, more than 7/10 of the Earth is water. We are not a land planet. We are a water planet. And so we have to pay attention to that. So meditate on the fact that this water coming in, coming out, the ebb and flow is like you're breathing. And if you can pace your breathing in such a way so that you follow the breathing of the sea, and sometimes it's very hard because the waves are not always even. But I do this a lot, and people don't know that I'm doing this, but that's why I go away to the sea alone. I don't go with a whole bunch of people as well. My download failed. Why? Sorry. I'm downloading massive files. We're talking about 30, 40, 50 gigabyte files, and they are not downloading. So while I'm talking to you, because otherwise it'll take me all night to get those downloaded. So regardless, if you start to pay attention to, what was I talking about? The ocean, the sea, and you start to pay attention to wind, if you live in a cold part of the world, the sound of snow, snow does make a sound, believe it or not, as it pelts against the window, and the howling winds. Hear this. If you happen to be in the forest and you hear the crickets or the cicadas, use that sound to be able to do this. But these are things you must do alone. Try to do it without anybody, because having someone present will only disturb your consciousness, and then you are locked into the idiocy of that person and their consciousness. So there's not very far you can go other than what their banal needs are in the world. I need to do this, I need to have that. Oh, you know what happened to me? Da, da, da. It's like, oh no, I don't want to. I've got stuff of my own to deal with, so I don't really want to. So let me tell you the story about Confucius. One day he was walking in the forest, and as is his normal way of doing things, he walks into the forest by himself, and then comes back and has breakfast. And he did it several times, a month, a week, sorry, every day, several weeks in a row, several months. And finally, his disciple said to him, "May I come with you, master?" And he nodded his head, and he went for the walk the next day. And as accordingly, saw the beautiful sunset, listened to the birds, watched the mist disappear from the mountains, the shore lines lapping. Both men just looking and enjoying it. This continued for several months. And then finally, the disciple said, "Master, there is a student here who would like to join us also on our walks." And Confucius thought about it, and after some hesitation said, "Sure, let him come." So came, walked, were very silent and meditative, contemplative, and they were looking at the world and the planet and everything else, and looking at the clouds and the beautiful birds singing around. And Confucius just looked, the disciple looked, and everybody was enthralled by the miracle of life. And finally, the sun came up. Confucius looked, breathing steadily. The disciple looked, appreciating it silently, breathing. And the younger disciple finally looked up and said, "Beautiful." And they walked on. That day in the evening, after the afternoon nap and everything else, Confucius turned to his disciple and said, "Please don't invite that other younger disciple to join us." And so the first disciple said, "Why not? He's too talkative." Are you able to, with your spouse, somebody else's spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, dog, camel, whatever you're living in a committed relationship with, walk in silence and enjoy everything about nature, about life around you, the miracle? Even in cities, there are miracles to behold. Are you able to do that without a single word? And if you're able to do that, then you have understood that every word spoken influences the person who hears you and the person who utters it, which is you, at the same time. So even though the words may be beautiful or lovely, it's wonderful, then you're drawn into the consciousness of somebody who spoke those words. The best not to do that and allow your inner consciousness to guide you along the way. And ask, if you will, that inner God force, I don't know what to call it, I won't even dare name it. Ask it, the effulgent spiritual essence, to make you become a blessing to others. Not only are you the one out in the world looking for blessings, like a blessing giver, beggar, or one asking for gifts from the world. Why don't you become a gift and give your blessings quietly, silently to others? Love, joy, happiness, healing. You don't have to tell people you're healing them, but you are. So spend a lot of time in nature, as I do. I do spend a lot of time in nature, and I do it in a different form. If I cannot do it in reality out there, then I surround myself with an audiovisual cue to be able to make this happen. Then I realized that there's somewhere along the way, in the future, this is what's going to be the reality on this planet. There are many places you won't be able to go to because they will not exist anymore, or getting to them will be such a hassle, a pain, so you won't be able to make it happen. So always recognize that these mountains that rise and fall and valleys that sink sometimes and are beneath the sea, it's not something we decreed, but it's something we as humanity has created with the global climate threat and the problems that we've had. So somewhere along the way, the boundary between the sea and the land disappears on the beach. Somewhere in the forest, the boundaries between your spiritual nature and your physical nature begin to melt as you meditate. So exercise your power of choice, people. No matter what happens to you, you always have the freedom to choose what it is you want to feel at any one time. You can feel bad about losing something, or you can let it go. Take a helicopter view and say, that's not much. That's $10. That's $100. That's $10,000. What does it matter? I made somebody happy. Even though they may have stolen it from you, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, your God is, what did you say your God was? Omniscient. That means he knew everything. He knew you're going to be screwed. Omnipotent. That means extremely powerful, can reverse everything. Wow. Anyway, you know what I mean. Just relax, take it easy, take a helicopter view, and then maybe when you see it that way, you can select growth over stagnation for yourself as well. Let's see some comments here from people. Milos says, back up, back up, back up. Those were instructions he gave last night with doggy style. That works as well. Thank you. Oh, you mean computer? Yes, of course. Yes, you have to back up. Otherwise, if you don't back up, you lose everything. You just start all over again. And no amount of helicopter view is going to help you at that point. Your helicopter has no fuel at that point. Welcoming Amy Lastino Bencio to the studio, Joanne Go, and Tanya. Welcome as well to the studio. If you have any questions for me, now would be a good time to ask before I continue discussing what is not, cannot be done. We are at 9:47. We began this program. We began this program at 9 o'clock or a little bit beyond that. I can't remember. But if you want to come on and talk about some things, it'll be a good thing as well. When you start to walk a spiritual path, you need to be able to ask yourself several questions. How selfless are you, really? How much are you willing to sacrifice? And ask, how much are you able to serve? How much time? How much effort? How much money? How much whatever? You have to ask yourself these questions. How much able? That's not English. How able are you to be willing to submit to a course of action and thinking that would kind of pull you away from the way normal people, quote unquote normal people, live, accumulate things, normality, go to school, get a degree, go out, get a job, be a high-paid servant for someone who runs a company, be the reason why they are successful because they bought your time from 9 a.m. in the morning, earlier, if you have to wake up earlier, to 5 p.m. in the evening, later, if you haven't finished your work. So you see, corporations and people who run companies buy your time that you could have spent in prayer, in service, in writing, in creating, in singing, in building something that would last forever, and spending time with your family and the people you love. And that's very, very difficult. And how much are you willing to suffer? When I first began this journey of spiritual growth and everything else, I began it in the most ardent way possible. I gave up everything, lived on the street for a long, long time. See if I could do that. Uh, Several months on the street, eating from the back of McDonald's dumpsters when I was 21 years old. It was a difficult time in my life because I was dealing with somebody who had stolen all my money and literally part of the future. And I was in Canada at that time. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I don't think it was pride. It was just the wanting to see if I could live in complete trust with this God force that I had begun to believe and begun to feel and begun to understand was real, more real than the illusions that people follow on the planet. And that the things that people crave, which is companionship, could I learn to live happily by myself? And could I teach others to do the same? The other things they crave, money. Well, could I live without and still survive and be okay? Well, I found that the reality is that money gives you an ability to make decisions more. It gives you more choices in the decisions you need to make. But that's not the happiness that you need. And when people talk about happiness, they're talking about fulfillment. And they're talking about feeling content with what they have and content with their place in life. And when Goethe had said that it was the unhappy man, at that time, man meaning women as well, the unhappy men and women of the planet, the unsatisfied men and women of the planet were the movers and shakers of the planet because they didn't like the way things were, so they moved and changed everything. So it becomes a little bit difficult for them to do. So somewhere along the way, when you walk on the spiritual path, ask yourself this question: how much are you willing to suffer? Because suffering is going to be there, because you're going to have to give up some ideas of the world that you held important. I want to live in a beach house by the sea or lake. I want to have a dog or a cat or a genetic combination of both so that I don't have to have more than one animal. I want to have a wife or a husband who loves me only and nobody else. And because I cut their testicles off or something like that, I have no idea. But you have your wishes and wants and desires. Are you willing to give them up? And if you are you able to? If you are, then that's great. If you are not, then are you able to marry them with some of the needs and wants that you have without making you into this person who is a constant cycler through life, going through cycles and cycles and cycles where there's no growth? Growth means you break out of cycles. Growth means the cycles never repeat. That's what spiritual growth is. Spiritual growth is preparing to be off the planet long before you're off the planet. So in other words, from the minute you wake up to think that you are going to die. I mean, sounds heavy and such a terrible thought when people think about it, but it's not, and it is because and you must as well, if you want to be happy. And I have embraced death. It may be tomorrow. It may be after this show. It may be any time. I have embraced it. So much so that when I wake up in the morning, that first thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm awake. I'm alive. That's me breathing. The second thank you is, wow, there's no nuclear explosion. The house is still here. There Air conditioning system works. I'm cool. I'm happy. The third thank you is for everybody I'm about to meet today, that day in the morning. And I'm just so blessed. So every day has never happened before. Every day is a new day. Every person I meet, even though they may be the same people, have different dramas and different things happening in their life. And what's my job? Listen and take a helicopter view. Just look at everything. And if they need you and you're the only source of someone listening to them, then play a song in your head, which is what I do. And when I listen to them, it's like, wow. Someone talks and I have a rhythm in my head. Of course, you don't sing aloud because you'll irritate the shit out of people and they'll won't want to talk to you anymore. And they'll think you're some kind of criminal that came to hurt them or something. I have no idea. So regardless, that's basically what I wanted to share with you. And let me read some comments here. Hi, Dr. Mel. Bing, how are you? I love your name, Bing. I tell you why. Because no one can say it in a not excited way, you know? And just by meeting you, you brighten someone's day when they say your name. Imagine I meet you for the very first time. Bing! My day is already good. I have to meet your brothers, though. Bang and the... Anyway, I'm just kidding. Margarita says, hi, Dr. Gill. 10 minutes privilege of listening to you. How come only 10 minutes? Is that all you're allowed by your keepers? Oh, my gosh. Wish you could listen to me all the time. Joycelyn, hi, Dr. Mel. Hey, Joycelyn, how are you? Oh, Margarita says, we should change our life aspects or accept life and death cycles. Accept the fact that you're going to die, that you're not going to get out of this life alive. The fact is we're on a fast train towards death. This is our final destination. The station is not pretty because it's a wall. It's just a thick wall. And so the train, no matter how fast it's going, whether it's going at 1,000 kilometers per second or it's going at 100 kilometers a second, slow or fast, a lot of people rushing everywhere, but death is the final destination. No, I'm going to build this, I'm going to build that, I'm going to create this, I'm going to create that. I'm doing that too, but for me, it's a game. If I succeed, everybody wins. If I don't succeed, I kept myself busy. And so that was very, very cool. So I hope that works for you as well. So should you change your life? Don't change anything. Just be who you are. Life will change you if it needs to change you. And if you've noticed so far, some of the things that you've been, some of the person you have become, some of the traits you developed along the way was as a result of all of these things happening to you. Have you noticed that? And so you've had to adapt, you've had to bend, you've had to be malleable. And somewhere along the way, you had to accept the situation you were in at some point. Taking a helicopter view after embracing death is an amazing thing because they don't teach you this. But I'm telling you this right now, do this. Embrace death tonight if you want to. It's going to make tomorrow amazing. I say tonight because Singapore, we are at 10 o'clock. We are at 10 o'clock right now, p.m. And for you in New York, if you happen to be in New York, you'll be at 10 a.m. And places in between, you have different times. But if you practice this tonight before going to sleep, as I do regularly, I take a deep breath. And I think that I'm not going to wake up in the morning. That this was my last day. And damn it, I didn't do half the stuff I wanted to do. Didn't finish all the things I wanted to finish. And didn't write all those books about love and abundance and health and deservedness and law of attraction and law of distraction and everything else. Did not do any of that. Oh, I have none of those regrets. But they peak out though a little bit when I'm embracing that, because at that point I begin to realize, oh hell, whether I had this great plan or not, I didn't get to finish it. I didn't get to execute it. It's unfinished business. So as a result, I go to bed thinking, wow, I'm tired. I don't know why, because I've done all of these things, and I've got all these things ahead of me and all the planning and everything else, and wow, nothing worked. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself before you sleep, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to have a helicopter view of everything that happened tonight, including the quote unquote death. And when I wake in the morning, you rise again, amazing stuff will happen. You will start to see things as, I'm living on borrowed time. I'm living in a way in which everything given to me is special, and everything, I'm given a second chance to do the things I didn't complete, the unfinished business. And so it's kind of fun, and I look forward to it, and I try to do it again. And then the next night I repeat the same thing. I embrace death and then continue. And then it comes to a point within a couple of weeks that you no longer are afraid of death. You welcome it, because you'll be joining the God force, everything within you. So it will be very, very amazing what you'll have with you. Joyce then says, hello, Gordana. Gordana Gordy Coolidge. Nice to see you. Joyce says, that's right, but still never stop to dream. Just keep going without the fear of death. Que sera, sera, depending on God's plan. Yeah, that's just it. There's a plan, but you're involved in it as well. You're involved in its creation. And the minute you own up to that, the minute you realize that this thing called life is what you are also creating and you're responsible for, then you lift the pressure off the God force, and you don't become another beggar like all the other billions of beggars asking God for something, but you begin to participate in the God-like emergence of destiny, and now you're in charge. And if something doesn't happen the way you want it to happen, it's okay. It doesn't matter, because there's something you didn't do. So find out what it is you didn't do and repeat it again until you get it. And if it's not meant for you, then you have to have a little bit of common sense or uncommon sense to be able to recognize when to let go of it. And then you'll be okay. On to the next thing. Then you'll be surprised. Que sera, sera. The song is beautiful. I don't know if you heard it. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. But the future is ours to be, to make happen. And that's what we're here to do. Keep busy while that happens. And help as many people who are not aware of these things. So the role of a spiritual person. What is the role of a spiritual person? I'm going to assume that part of the spiritual nature of you is that you awaken. Will you have gifts and abilities and talents? There's a difference between an awakened person and an enlightened person. You have to understand this, and this took a long time for me to understand. So I'm going to start off by telling you what it is, and then you will discover through your life how it works. An awakened person has access to all the gifts and talents and siddhis and ability to create magic and walk on water and do all of that. An awakened person is awakened to the laws of physics, of time, of space, of interdimensional matter, of multidimensional aspects of physics that we are still not clear about, although there is some thought that consciousness is somehow interwoven into the technology of the next 250 years in the future, where consciousness is part of technology. Right now, our telephones. Imagine. I mean, the young people cannot imagine it, but the people who are from my generation, remember in the 1990s, this was very big. This was the size of a water bottle, that you drink your water from. And now in a small device this big, and this is ancient. This is still an iPhone 6. I can hear the radio. I can record. I see television, small little images. I communicate with everybody. And in a time, here's the funny thing. Ouch. Here's the funny thing. Nikola Tesla, more than 100 years ago, predicted this device. The whole world would be connected. The entire libraries of Alexandria would be open to us, that we would have all knowledge in the world. We'll be able to communicate instantly with each other. And in the 1990s, we had to pay thousands of dollars for overseas calls. Now on WhatsApp and Viber and Messenger and Line and blah, 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 we are able to communicate with each other for hours with video for free, for no cost, nothing, almost nothing. Imagine the world we live in now, and that took less than 20 years to come about. Can you imagine another 20 years when we do a quantum leap forward with consciousness melted into meaty mind interfaces with machines? Can you imagine that when we start to interface with machines? And it'll be very interesting. Right now, we're very close. Alexa, tell me what time it is. Or Siri, what's the temperature like in such and such a place? And it will tell you. It will speak up, and you'd be surprised what will happen. See if Siri works. Hey, Siri, are you asleep? Yeah, it is. Sometimes Siri doesn't answer. There's a reason it comes in a female voice, I guess, because I must have said something wrong. I'm not idea what I said or how I said it, but I know I'll have to apologize to Siri at some point, and then the computer will start talking to me again. Kidding. If you have any questions for me, now is a good time to type it out here, or type it out here in Facebook, and I'll answer your question. Otherwise, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, if there are no more questions, I will start to close this session of Uncommon Sense, and we will broadcast again on Friday at 9 p.m. Singapore time, and that's 9 a.m. New York time. And sorry, I'm just restarting the backup. And the topic will be about the power of the mind. Today, I just kept it in the spiritual because I didn't have my son with me. He had collected a whole bunch of questions that people had asked him to ask me. And I didn't realize that. I wasn't paying attention, and they were writing to him as well. So if you have any questions for me, let me give you his email, and you can send it to him. And he'll be able to pass it on to me, and we'll answer those questions as well. So I just sent you his email. So that's lukegill@gmail.com. You'll see it in the comment section here, and you'll see it in the comment section here in the Facebook as well. So I presume that there are no more questions. All right. Charn, we need to talk at some point. Maybe on Friday. I wanted to talk to you about an idea I have. Uh, Pass it by you and see if it's something you want to work with. There's somebody I want to talk to also here. I don't know. Regardless, somebody had asked me a question earlier today about what I thought would happen with the coronavirus when it would go away. And from all indications, and it's just my opinion, again, recognize that I may be wrong, but if I were to future trend and to look forward, I think the way of our normal living of life uh, has permanently changed. We are now more aware of germs and bacteria and viruses on surfaces. We are less, we take for granted less the things that before were so urgently needed and we couldn't find it in the stores, especially toilet paper, and there's still a big question mark there as well. But there's a lot of people that are that suffered as a result. And in the United States, 180,000 people dead. Wow, that's crazy. While this madman continues and shuts down the post office just to be able to not let, because he knows he's going to lose. So he doesn't want the other side to make it easier for the other side to win. He wants the margins to be looking a lot less. But somewhere along the way, America has evolved in the last 3 years from a democracy to a dictatorship of sorts, where the king's advisors are all criminals and felons. So, wow, great, good job, inspiration to the world. The eagle is no longer a bird of protection. It is a bird of prey. Always has been a bird of prey. And maybe we should keep things the way they are. So today we had a chance to talk about spiritual growth a little bit. When we meet again on Friday on this channel, same time, I want to be able to answer the questions that I have ignored, mostly from you. I want to be able to bring you something more intentional than just knowledge, because the knowledge is not going to help you, but the application of the knowledge will. And so I'm going to turn my entire focus to teach you not so much to become happy, because happiness is a byproduct of the way you think and the way you act and things you do, but instead to teach you how to have peace of mind. And somewhere along the way, inner peace is a construct that's not taught to us when we were small, when we were growing up, when we were little. They never told us that we were being born pilgrims in the world, but instead they told us that we were going to be permanent creatures here, that we will come into this world, we will find a plot of land, and we will build a house, and the house will live forever, and nothing will break that down. They didn't tell us that we are nomads, birds without wings, here on this tiny island, nowhere to go. But we have everywhere to go. The earth is filled with streams and mountains, lands that are born of the clouds, places that near to the sea, where the water is so crystal clear, you can see all the way to the bottom. 30 meters or more. I have been living a life of a pilgrim. No, I'm not a master motivator. I'm not a master trainer. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a pilgrim. And it's very difficult to journey as a pilgrim without being changed. It's to be a nomad. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and to be transformed by the journey, that is to be a pilgrim. We all start out as pilgrims. We are wanting to journey and hoping to be transformed by the journey. But just as it is impossible when listening to an orchestra to hear the whole of the symphony for very long before we are drawn to hear only the piano or only the violin. In just this way, our attention to life slips and we experience people and places without being affected by their wholeness, their completeness, everything that makes them them. And sometimes feeling isolated and unsure, we change or we hide what lives within us in order to please or to avoid other people. And the value of this insight is not to use it to judge or berate ourselves, but to help one another see that this integrity is an unending process of letting our inner experiences and our outer experiences complete each other, in spite of our very human frailties and human lapses. I understand these things so well because I violate them so often. And yet I, as you, consider myself a pilgrim of the deepest kind, journeying beyond any one creed or tradition into the compelling and recurring space into which we know the moment and we are changed by it. So mysteriously, as elusive as it is, this moment where the eye is what it sees, where the heart is what it feels, this moment shows us that what is real is sacred. And what is real is what we take every day from the world in a single breath. Good night, everyone.